No industry changes faster than modern marketing. Great marketers need an edge. Great marketers need to be brave. The Brave Marketer podcast provides an opportunity for each guest to share a story where they exhibited bravery by taking a risk that made a dramatic impact in the market. Our guests are marketers from top brands and agencies who share the exact strategies and tactics they used in their brave marketing moment. We then dive deep into topics like ethical advertising, consumer privacy, crypto marketing, brand safety, and navigating a future without third-party cookies. Hosted by Brave Software and me, Donnie DeVoren, head of sales at Brave. Together, we'll get a backstage view of the brave marketing moments and creative mindset work that's shaping today's most influential brands. Hello, Brave Marketer listeners. You're listening to a new episode of the Brave Marketer podcast. In this one, we're going to feature Darren Herman. He's the operating partner at Bain Capital. And you're going to love this one because Darren's got so much great experience. I'll read you his bio in a second. But before you have a chance to listen to it, I want to highlight our Brave Pick of the Week. And so, as you know, every episode we choose a brand that's run an ad campaign with Brave. And our Pick of the Week is actually Chainlink. And they're a new partner that connects your smart contract to the outside world through a decentralized Oracle network that provides reliable, tamper-proof inputs and outputs for smart contracts on any blockchain. Well, there's a mouthful. They drive quality traffic via push notifications and massive awareness through sponsored image takeovers and are really seeing great results. So let's talk about Darren. As I mentioned, Darren is an operating partner at Bain Capital, where he works on growth strategies. Prior to joining Bain Capital, he spent time leading the first privacy-preserving content platform at Mozilla and spent nearly a decade on Madison Avenue leading digital programs and ad budgets large and small. Darren's had some impressive accomplishments. In addition to launching the first paid tweet ever for Kim Kardashian, he launched one of the first programmatic platforms in the world at Veric, and even recently won a Silver Lion for creative business transformation. Darren has been rated by Businessweek as a top 25 entrepreneur. His agencies have been recognized by iMedia Connection and media magazines as a top agency in global corporate venturing, and he was ranked as a top 100 global corporate investor. We're excited to have him as our guest. And now for today's episode of The Brave Marketer. Well, Darren, welcome to the Brave Marketer podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. And yourself? Thanks for having me on, Donnie.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you. Why don't we just start with what's the most exciting thing you're working on right now?
Most exciting thing. There's the digital transformations that are and evolutions that are happening within our companies here at Bain Capital. And then there's the side hustle, such as some of the angel investments that I make in new spaces that are usually outside of what we would do here at Bain Capital. And so get excited about where I'm focused these days in the collectibles, the sports card, and sort of NFT markets. So that's been exciting.
Well, we have a lot of crypto listeners. Where do you think are the investment opportunities? Are they like the NFT exchanges? Is it the producers of them? Or they're like, where is the opportunity money-wise?
Well, so exchanges are only interesting if you can get to significant volume. Otherwise, they're not great businesses because they're taking small points on every single transaction that happens. But if you can be the dominant exchange, then, the world's amazing. If you're the creator, I think the creator parts of the world are really interesting right now because you can monetize downstream where you would never be able to do before. So if I was an artist and I was just traditionally selling in a gallery, the minute I sell my art through the gallery, I take my cut and then I never see any downstream effects of my art again. But in the NFT world, the ownership changes a bit and I can set royalties and I can set other sort of factors that I can monetize myself, even if there's a secondary, tertiary, or some other transaction down the line, even years down the line. And so I think it has great effect on the creators themselves. We'll start to see it in industries like the music industry with artists, that are creating music and beyond, video games, et cetera. And so excited for where that goes, but I think it'll absolutely affect those.
Good. So obviously, you know that this podcast is all about brave marketing moments. So can you share your brave marketing moments where you took a big leap of faith and you were brave?
It's a good question. There's probably a handful that we can talk about. I'd say one of which, in no particular order, we were in a new business pitch way back in the day. This is when I was on the agency side of the business. And we were pitching a very large financial institution. And we were invited in. And all they wanted from the brief that they had given was a big television plan. And we usually, when a marketer asks for something, you just give it to them. Whether it's right or wrong, you just give it to them because that's what they asked for. But we didn't do that. And we wanted the complete opposite. We actually didn't have any TV on the plan. And I was working at a media agency at the time. And so our job was to plan, recommend, and execute, and measure and optimize any type of media that you're putting in the market. And this marketer really wanted TV. We came in with a completely digital plan. We did have digital video, but this was a long time ago where it wasn't so easy to do digital video at scale. And we ended up winning. It's like a 3 or 4 month drawn out pitch process, but we ended up winning because we didn't tell them what they wanted to hear, and they weren't expecting that. And then we were able to use pretty good arguments based in data and very quantitative arguments to make the case that what we were doing is probably more right than wrong. Not perfect, but more right than wrong. And why just a TV plan was not going to cut it. And so I'd say the brave moment there was not give the marketer what they expect. And I'd say that was one. Maybe a second, which I've worked with some of your colleagues in the past on, was I joined Firefox, or Mozilla's Firefox, I think back in 2013, and I joined them to lead an initiative to build the first privacy-preserving content and advertising recommendation systems within the browser. Imagine trying to do that in a browser like Firefox, where everyone using the browser itself, for the most part, don't want advertising and don't want recommendations.
It's not much easier at Brave.
So imagine being on the front lines of that. So I had a head start on you, and I got to work with a bunch of your colleagues. It was fascinating, and it wasn't easy because not only did some of our customers, some of our users, our entire user base of the web browser say, "What are you guys doing?" Even before we launched this, but even internally within the organization. So a fair amount of change management did never happen within the organization, and so we were on the front lines, but through the 24 months or however long I was there to work on the project, and then it went on to have its own life, it took a life of its own. And we got to show the world that actually doing privacy-preserved content recommendations actually isn't going to hurt you. And it makes your life better more often than not. And if you don't want it, turn it off. And we did that. And that was a huge sort of step through Pandora's box. And I'd say that was probably one of the braver times of my career. And I was excited about that.
Nice. Where do you know where the privacy preserving content or ads lives today?
It's open source, so that's cool. So, it's online, but we've used a fair amount of that in the acquisition of Pocket. And so the Pocket team started to use some of the technology, the relationships, and the business that we built out within content services.
Nice. Got it. Good. So I know you were involved with partnering with Kim Kardashian on some paid Twitter posts. Can you tell us about that? Did you work with a specific brand? How'd that come about?
We're going way back. So I was at a media agency at the time, and we were known to do super creative media tactics. And Twitter was popping up. I think South by Southwest had just happened, and Twitter was like all the rage. And there's literally, I think at the time, it was like 10 million users. That's it. Maybe it was 3 million or 10. I'm totally blanking. And Kim had a third of all Twitter users as followers. So if it was 3 million people, she had 1 million. And if it was 10 million people, she had just over 3 million followers. And a company had come to us and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing called like paid tweets. We think that this would be awesome for you guys to get involved and do. And I was like, yeah, probably. It'd be super cool. And so I looked at our client base, and we had a particular client. We were launching Armani Jeans here in America. And Armani Jeans are pretty popular in Europe, and Armani Exchange is popular here, but we never really had Armani Jeans brand. And this was like a perfect opportunity to take the Armani Jeans and partner with Kim and launch that. We were doing some stuff with Cristiano Ronaldo and Megan Fox separately, and so this was like nice to put into that same level. So what we did was we paid $10,000 at the time, which seemed like a lot of money. But today, it's like pennies for what she gets. And we gave her the ability to go to one of our stores in a mall and try on the jeans, take a picture, and then tweet like a code for her followers to get some discount off the jeans. And it was in mid-August, which in internet times is like a dead month. So the minute she tweeted it and uploaded the picture and the promotion code, we melted the servers on ArmaniJeans.com. Like literally, the servers went offline. And it was our busiest e-commerce day of the year. It beat Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, you name it. And we were down. We literally were down for hours because of the traffic that was being pushed to the servers. And this is back, I don't remember, 2007, 2008 maybe. And redundancy in cloud wasn't really a thing. And so our Armani e-commerce team was scrambling to keep their e-commerce site up. So that was some fun we had with Kim and the team we did there.
Nice. It was obviously successful because it melted their service.
The biggest sales day Armani ever had. We saw how many people use the promotions code. And when you look at comp, so retail runs on comp, and how this day this year performed against this day last year, et cetera, both from total revenue, margin dollars, et cetera, we crushed it. And not just on the single day, but as you looked out weeks and months past, Armani Jeans in the United States definitely took a life of its own.
So you mentioned your media experience. You launched Varick, right? Can you talk about that experience of launching the Varick?
When I was at the agency, I was at a media agency called the Media Kitchen, which was part of MDC Partners, which is a publicly traded advertising holding company. We saw the writing on the wall for programmatic advertising and marketing. And we didn't have a capability or an organization within the 50 or so agencies that MDC owned that could own and operate this particular space. And so I raised my hand and said, I'll build it. And so Varick was a combination of human talent plus technology that allows marketers to buy individual impressions, layer data, and do extremely targeted paid advertising. It started in display, but then most media channels are now all programmatic, and the activation of both third and first party data gets layered on and becomes super efficient and effective for marketers. That was a lot of fun because it was a startup within a large publicly traded holding company. It was a very good business for the holding company overall, and it was the future of media. And one could say it was a brave sort of media strategy because nobody knew it early on. But now, when you think about the share of digital dollars that are being spent or invested within the advertising markets, a big percentage of them are programmatic one way or another. And I guess if people are looking for a business to compare it to, there's a really solid publicly traded company called The Trade Desk that is dominating the public markets completely in the programmatic advertising space. I think the whole sort of programmatic ecosystem crystallized for me. We had a client named Piaggio, which is a huge motorcycle company out of Italy, but everybody in the United States knows their scooter brand called Vespa. And so we were doing some work for Vespa, and we did an entire campaign where we targeted it based upon a whole bunch of different demographics and in different markets. And the whole programmatic advertising really crystallized for me when you saw the data that you get back on who's interacting with the ads and who's clicking on the ads and who's purchasing. And you can really get segmented. And so we learned a lot of information about our Vespa buyers. And those customer insights we then used to then build scooters that appealed more towards those respective audiences. And you could bring advertising insights up into product innovation and product development. And that's really where you feel that you can drive results and, really leverage throughout the organization. And so that was super successful. And that's when I sat back and was like, all right, we got something here. Now we just got to keep doing it. And so we built it into a really strong business, hired many folks. Many of the folks have since gone out and are running big organizations today. And so when I look back on my teams and my organization, I'm proud when they've gone off to do really cool things. And that Varick team is running most of the advertising ecosystem these days. So I'm excited about it. We hired well.
That's awesome. Yeah. And if you think about it, if you were to continue down the path and maybe break it off from MDC, could it be as big as the Trade Desk? Could it be a multi-billion-dollar organization on their own? Because like you said, the business models are so similar.
Yeah. So we were approached many times to potentially separate it out, but MDC wanted to capture the value for itself. And for the time, our performance was part of the rise of the MDC stock during that time period. And I'd say MDC at the time captured quite a bit of that value.
And you talked a lot about the targeting that you were doing on the Vespa buy, specifically creating the custom audiences and then having it full circle. How much do you think that's going to be changing over the next couple of years with the demise of the third-party cookie and privacy and all the changes that Apple's making? Obviously, it's going to get a lot harder to do that. Where do you see that going?
So I can talk out of both sides of my mouth on this one. I can make arguments for both sides. I try to think about these types of questions and how have other industries or businesses been affected and what happened there. And usually it's the toothpaste never goes back in the tube kind of analogy that I'll play here, which I believe in, which is the minute that you get toothpaste out of the tube, it is very hard to put toothpaste back in that tube. And I think in the advertising ecosystem, even when we weren't doing quote unquote programmatic targeting or very data enriched buying, we were still doing audience targeting in the pre-buys. So even in like Mad Men, when Don Draper and Carrie Crane were like figuring out what the media strategy should be for the Mad Men brands way back when, they were still doing audience analysis to understand what audiences are watching what shows or reading what magazines, and then would go into those shows or magazines based upon the audience composition. It's always about comp and then reach and frequency. And so that hadn't changed. Just the evolution of that has been even being more precise and trying to get rid of the waste of doing that. Because way back when, you would buy on composition, and even if it was like an 80% composition of the target audience you wanted to reach, you would have 20% waste, and you were okay with that because you're getting 80% of the audience you wanted. The beauty of digital was that you should, in theory, be able to waste less. Now, whether that's true or not is, not the point, but in theory, you should be able to waste less. And so I still think that we're not going back to Mad Men days of reach and frequency based upon composition numbers. I think that system and platforms and sites, or whatever you want to call them, browsers, they will enable ways to privacy preserve to be able to reach audiences through advertising. And the reason why I believe that is because if you get a random ad in front of you that has nothing to do with you, the experience is lessened. If you get a non-random ad that has something to do with you, at least a little bit, then the experience is heightened. And I liken to that as growing up playing video games. And whenever I played a video game where the brands were either non-existent or fake, and the teams were like fake, you felt like the game was like cheap and wasn't great, and the experience wasn't fantastic. And the minute that you saw real brands in the game and you saw like real teams and you saw real players, it heightened the experience and the premiumness of that respective game. It's why licenses for sports leagues for the video game industry are expensive. That's why licenses of whatever brands to be used in other brands in film and in television, radio, etc., is expensive because it adds a premium nature. So, I think humans naturally want things to be relevant to them to a point, but when things are super not relevant, it detracts from the overall experience. And so I think just the way of getting there and bringing more privacy preserving ways, and to be honest, respect of the user, will enable us to achieve that. And then the second side is the death of the cookie. I think we'll see brownies and cupcakes. If I know anything about the ad tech industry, it'll find ways to reinvent itself a million ways. I think you have to do that, though, with the customer in mind and do it in a way that's privacy preserving and respects the end user. If you can do that, then you can maintain trust with that end user.
Yeah. So you won a Silver Lion for creative business transformation with your work with RGA for Michaels. What was the strategy behind that, and what was your role?
Well, so there's a lot of people that won that award on our side. Not just me, but Bain Capital used to be a large investor in a business called Michaels, which is a national arts and crafts retailer. And there was a core insight of that business was we forgot who our customer was. And when we recentered on who our customer was, which is the maker, we completely transformed that entire business around this maker philosophy. And we put the maker front and center in everything we do, both in the stores, online, in any omni-channel capability. The cool part for me is usually at my job at Bain Capital, I don't get to sit inside the organization. I sit within Bain and I help from the sidelines. This is one of those special ones where I was the chief marketing officer of Michaels for 6 months, and I was literally in Dallas. I'm pretty much full time, and we've won many awards, but this one, it means a lot to me because I was there.
Take it out of Darren's world for a second. What do you think is the biggest threat or some of the most pressing challenges facing the marketing advertising industry today?
There's a handful of things that are out there. How do you target, regardless of whether it's cookies or not, but do it in a way that's privacy preserving, and the user of the internet or any World Wide Web, connected device, et cetera, are part of the process as opposed to the end process in itself. And I'm excited about that. There's a great book written by Doc Searles called The Intention Economy. I brought that into a bunch of the work that we did at Mozilla and Firefox. I think he's like on the forefront of a lot of that thinking through, I think he's over at Harvard and doing a lot of sort of academic studying of the ecosystem. There's ways that consumers can be part of things and not just be targeted at or targeted to. And I'm excited about that. That's a huge growth area, I think, for the next decade plus. And that's an area that I think deserves quite a bit of attention because a lot of things aren't figured out there.
Just to interject there, I always believe that advertising should be bought based on attention. I guess CPA would make a lot of sense. The value of that attention of who you're targeting. Just as an example, at Brave, we have something called the 10-second visit rate. So how many people click the ad, go to the landing page, and spend 10 seconds or more on that landing page? Now, we're not charging per se on a 10-second visit rate. We could, but we're not. But something like that where you're really paying for time and attention.
I hear you loud and clear. My first startup I ever did at scale, where we raised venture money, this is like in the early 2000s, was putting ads and content within video games. And we measured time on screen, angle of ad, because a lot of these are worlds where, you know, your brand isn't exactly being shown head on. And so angle, time, and size of screen. So size of ad in relation to the percentage of the screen that it's taking up. And so we had like those three metrics, and it like blew media planners' minds. But the problem was they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, they don't know how to like bill you. Like, what do I put on the ad?
Exactly. It doesn't fit into the template of the plan. And it's a custom metric. And, you know, the advertising world doesn't love custom, and it doesn't fit neatly. That learning for me was like any subsequent business that I had spent time with, either advising or investing or doing whatever. So you got to conform it to what the world of marketing is looking for.
It's so true. I was at a startup called This Moment, and it was the same exact problem because we were building out custom YouTube channels and Facebook pages and Instagram. And they're like, is this creative side? Is this the media side? They didn't know where the budget was, you know, where to put it. And everybody loves the idea, but if you can't be in a line item, you're not on a line item.
Amen. That's exactly that. And so, you know, if you really want to get to scale through media, then you got to fit on an insertion order. and it's hard not to. You could offer all the bells and whistles and the nice ways to measure, et cetera. But unless you sit there nicely, it's tough to scale.
Yeah, exactly. And on the flip side, what do you think some of the biggest opportunities are? Maybe that's one of them, the idea of an attention economy.
Yeah, the attention economy is a huge one. We all like to think that we've cracked measurement. We have not cracked measurement. The famous John Wanamaker statement of half my advertising is working, I just don't know what half, still exists. And for the marketers that have really studied their spend, even the most sophisticated of them will say there's still some assumptions based in there. And measurement, I don't know if we'll ever get to the holy grail of measurement. I think measurement is, we're like 65, 70% of the way there, but we're absolutely not much further than that. And then the other opportunity that I absolutely love is, maybe it's because I'm old school, but creativity. I saw a really good ad recently and the copywriting was amazing. And it reminded me of like a David Ogilvy spot or print ad from, I don't know, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s. And it was, I think, for Adam's shoes. And the copywriting was phenomenal. And I haven't seen anything like that in a decade. And it was actually like a long writing. It was basically telling the user why they should pay $129 or $139 for this pair of shoes. And they were unapologetic to the cost. And it was like dead on. The insight that I assume that came out of this was agency did a bunch of work to understand customer insight, to the shoes, to the price point, to the positioning. The number one hurdle was price. And so they copywrote an ad that had just a picture of the shoe, and then the copywriting all about why it's worth the price. And it was spot on. And actually, I saw it on Instagram, and I just messaged them back. And it was an ad that was served to me, and I just responded to it. And I was like, I want to know who your agency is. Like, kudos. This is great copywriting. And this is what advertising should be. I thought it was phenomenal. And when those moments happen, like when you see a good ad, you know. or you see a good anything. You see a good film, you see a good concert, you see a good whatever. And I want to bring a lot of that back because so much of what's been done today has gotten so watered down. It's boring, it's monotonous, it's so simple. And great messages don't always live in a banner ad. When was the last time someone talked about a banner? I want to see innovation come forth. And when it happens, people talk about it. And that's why I love the advertising industry or the marketing industry, is because of the creativity. And as much as we talk about the technology and the data and the mathematics and the optimizations and all the one side of the brain, there's also the other side of the brain that has to work. And for things to truly break through, you have to have some magic. And you never know where the magic's going to come from, but you got to go for it. And I want to see more sort of marketers and brand officers and digital officers lean into the magic, because that's where a lot of things happen.
Yeah, we use that as part of our sales pitch at Brave, that nobody says, oh, I just remembered seeing this banner ad, or or screenshot a banner ad and post it to Twitter or Reddit and say, this is great. But shameless plug, it happens nearly every week with Brave. The sponsored images that we're running on it's like our homepage takeover type unit. When Chipotle runs, when Crocs is running last week, like people go to Reddit and they're like, oh, look at this great brand on Brave. And they talk about it. And there was actually a listener of ours who went and created a whole website dedicated to all the sponsored images. It's brave.photos. And at brave.photos, if you want to check it out, Darren, as we're talking, you can see every sponsored image ad that we've run since the start of time. And you can really see the creative way that they're doing it. And this is what, people are talking about out there.
I like it.
Good. So you've done a lot of interesting things in your career. Can you nominate another brave marketer that we should have on this show?
There's a lot of good marketers out there. I think there's a lot of bravery, though, on the agency side, and probably more so than gets to the market. And agencies are putting together ideas that break through. So if I were to have to nominate someone for this Brave Marketer podcast, I would talk to Norm Billow of the Escape Pod. And what I love about what Norm does is he works with big brands, works with small brands. But what's consistent about their work is that the amount of bravery it takes to launch the work is significant. And he is able to convince marketers, chief marketing officers, boards, CEOs, et cetera, that they should launch this work. And I think that's a really interesting conversation to have for you, which is, how do you have that conversation with a marketer, with the CEO, with the board, to say, I know this is a little edgy, and I know that this may ruffle some feathers on the way out, but when this does get into market, it's going to stand out. And I think that's a huge process and a skill that Norm and his team are collectively very good at. And I would have that conversation with them.
Great. We definitely will reach out. If you want to make an intro, that'd be great too. So Darren, thank you so much. How can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to?
Super easy. I think on Twitter, in most social channels, it's dherman76. And feel free to reach out anytime. dherman76.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on the Brave Marketer podcast.
Hey, Donnie, thanks for having me, and appreciate you inviting me on.
Thank you for listening to today's episodes. There were some great takeaways. Obviously, love the story with Kim Kardashian and starting Varick as a programmatic agency. And so hopefully you enjoyed that and were able to take away some moments that you can inspire your own career. And if you liked what you heard today and found it valuable, it'd be super helpful if you took 1 minute to leave us a short review in Apple Podcasts. Every review counts in helping us get our show in more ears. And on a final note, if you have a brand, product, or service that you'd like to get in front of Brave's 34 million users, please email us at adsales@brave.com and let us know you're a podcast listener to unlock one of 2 perks. If your budget is under $10,000 a month, we'll bump you up to the top of our self-serve waiting list. Or if your budget is over $10,000 a month, you'll qualify for a 25% podcast listener discount. Again, email us at adsales@brave.com. And finally, musical credits for the music that you're hearing and the intro and the outro and throughout goes to my own brother, Ari Devorin. Big shout out to him. He writes great music out of Austin, Texas. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day and week.